If you're enjoying stories that touch your heart, make sure to subscribe to this channel for more compelling narratives that will move you. Now, let's begin our journey. The stale air of Riverside Funeral Home hung heavy with silence. Nathan Walsh shifted uncomfortably in the third row of wooden chairs, his gaze fixed on the gleaming mahogany casket at the front of the room. Inside lay his grandmother, Evelyn Walsh, a woman whose sharp tongue had cut deeper than any knife ever could. At 28, Nathan had grown accustomed to being the forgotten grandson. His pressed black suit felt too tight around the collar as he glanced around at the sparse gathering of family members. Aunts, uncles, and cousins sat with stiff backs and dry eyes, their expressions a mixture of obligation and relief. Reverend Miller cleared his throat for the third time. "Would anyone like to say a few words about Evelyn?" The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan watched as his relatives studied their shoes, adjusted their watches, and avoided eye contact with the Reverend. His Aunt Margaret, Evelyn's only daughter, shifted in her seat but remained silent. The weight of the moment pressed down on Nathan's chest. He had spent years as an English teacher at Westfield High School, encouraging his students to find their voices, to speak even when it was difficult. And now, in this moment of awkward collective cowardice, he found himself standing before he realized what he was doing. "I would," he said, his voice cracking slightly. All eyes turned to him in surprise. His father's eyebrows shot up in disbelief, and his cousin Melissa's mouth fell open. Nobody expected him, the least favored, the one Evelyn had once called a disappointment with chalk dust on his sleeves, to be the one to speak. As Nathan made his way to the podium, memories flashed through his mind. Evelyn's cutting remarks at family gatherings, her dismissal of his career choice, her constant comparisons between him and his more financially successful cousins. The last Christmas dinner where she had announced to everyone that teaching was a profession for those who couldn't do anything else. He gripped the edges of the wooden podium and looked out at the expectant faces. The truth about Evelyn Walsh would not serve anyone here, so he began to weave a different story. "My grandmother," Nathan began, his voice growing stronger with each word, "was a woman of remarkable complexity." He saw confusion flicker across his relatives' faces. "Many of you know that she could be challenging." A few nervous chuckles rippled through the audience. But beneath that exterior was a woman who understood the power of perseverance. Nathan found himself crafting a narrative about a version of Evelyn that had never existed, one who had secretly supported struggling artists in the community, who had shown him the value of literature when he was young, who had weathered the loss of her husband with quiet dignity. "I remember when I was 12, he continued, the fiction flowing effortlessly, "and she found me struggling with To Kill a Mockingbird. She sat with me on her porch swing and explained not just the plot, but the deeper meanings behind Atticus Finch's courage. Always stand for what's right, Nathan," she told me, "even when it costs you everything." From the corner of his eye, Nathan spotted his father's furrowed brow. No such moment had ever occurred, yet Nathan described it with such conviction that even he could almost believe it had happened. "She taught me that kindness isn't always wrapped in soft words and gentle touches. Sometimes it's wrapped in the truth, even when that truth is difficult to hear." As Nathan continued, he noticed something strange happening. His relatives were nodding, some even wiping away tears. They wanted, needed, to believe this version of Evelyn. And in crafting this eulogy, Nathan realized he was giving them permission to remember her differently, to rewrite their own painful histories with her. Her strength during her final days was a lesson to us all, Nathan concluded, his own eyes now unexpectedly moist. She faced the end as she faced everything, with determination and without complaint. When he finished, the silence that followed was different from before, contemplative rather than awkward. As he returned to his seat, several family members touched his arm in gratitude. His Aunt Margaret mouthed a tearful, "Thank you." The remainder of the service passed in a blur. As people began to disperse, Nathan lingered, watching as the funeral home staff prepared to transport the casket to the cemetery. He felt oddly hollow, as if the fictional grandmother he had created had somehow become more real than the actual woman he had known. "That was quite a performance, Mr. Walsh." Nathan turned to find an elderly man in an impeccable grey suit standing behind him. His silver hair was combed neatly to the side, and he carried a leather briefcase that looked as expensive as his polished shoes. "I'm Richard Hartwell," the man said, extending his hand, "your grandmother's attorney." Nathan shook his hand, noting the man's firm grip and the curious smile playing at the corners of his mouth. "Nice to meet you, Mr. Hartwell, though I wish it were under different circumstances." Hartwell nodded. "Indeed. However, I must say, congratulations." Nathan's brow furrowed. "Excuse me? You just passed her final test." Hartwell's eyes twinkled with something between amusement and admiration. "I don't understand," Nathan replied, his heart beginning to race. "Perhaps we should discuss this somewhere more private." Hartwell gestured toward a small office at the back of the funeral home. "With your permission, of course." Nathan followed the attorney, his mind racing with confusion. As they entered the modest office, Hartwell carefully placed his briefcase on the desk and opened it. "Your grandmother was a complicated woman, Mr. Walsh," Hartwell began, removing a thick folder. "I've been her attorney for over 30 years, and I can count on one hand the number of times I saw her genuinely smile." He handed Nathan an envelope with his name written on it in elegant, flowing script. She left specific instructions. The eulogy was to be observed, and I was to deliver this to you afterward. Nathan stared at the envelope. "You're saying she expected no one to speak at her funeral?" "She was realistic about her relationships." Hartwell's expression softened. "She wanted to see who, if anyone, would stand up and speak on her behalf, knowing how she had treated most of you." With trembling fingers, Nathan opened the envelope and began to read. "Dear Nathan, if you're reading this, it means you've done something no one else in this family had the courage to do. You spoke for me when no one else would. Whether what you said was true or not is irrelevant. What matters is that you showed compassion when it wasn't deserved. I've watched you grow from a stubborn boy into a man who teaches others to find beauty in words. While I never understood your choice to teach rather than pursue a more lucrative career, I've come to respect your dedication. You were the only one who visited me without wanting something in return. The only one who brought books instead of brochures for retirement homes. The only one who treated me as a person, not a bank account. For this reason, I've made the decision to leave my entire estate to you. Use it wisely, or don't. It's yours to do with, as you please." Evelyn Nathan looked up, stunned. "This can't be right." "I assure you it is," Hartwell said, removing more documents from his briefcase. "Your grandmother's estate, valued at approximately $2 million, has been left entirely to you." Nathan sat down heavily in the nearest chair. $2 million? That's impossible." "Evelyn was quite shrewd with her investments," Hartwell explained, "and quite private about her finances. I suspect most of your family has greatly underestimated her wealth." "But why me?" Nathan asked, his voice barely above a whisper. "She always seemed to disapprove of me." Hartwell smiled gently. Evelyn struggled with expressing affection, but she observed more than people realized. He handed Nathan another item from his briefcase, a leather-bound book. "She wanted you to have this as well." Nathan opened the book to find it was a scrapbook. On the first page was a newspaper clipping from 12 years ago, his high school graduation, where he had given the valedictorian speech. In the margin, in Evelyn's distinctive handwriting, he has his grandfather's gift with words. Page after page revealed moments from Nathan's life, his college graduation, a small article about a poetry contest he had won, the announcement of his hiring at Westfield High, even a photo of him with his students after they had won a regional literature competition, each accompanied by brief notes in Evelyn's hand. "She kept track of my life," Nathan murmured, disbelief coloring his voice. All these years. As I said, she struggled with expressing her feelings directly, Hartwell replied. But she was immensely proud of you. Nathan turned to the final pages of the scrapbook, finding them blank except for a single note on the last page. The rest is for you to fill. There's something else you should know, Hartwell said, his tone more serious. The visits you made to her in the hospital these past few months. You were the only family member who came more than once. The only one who didn't mention her money or her house. The only one who brought her books and read to her. Nathan remembered those visits. Awkward at first, but gradually becoming more comfortable. How Evelyn had rarely spoken, but always listened as he read from classic novels. How her expression had softened as he read from Pride and Prejudice, her favorite. She never said anything, Nathan said softly. Never thanked me, or even acknowledged that she enjoyed it. No, she wouldn't have, Hartwell agreed. But she did leave you one more letter that might explain some things. She asked that you read it in private. He handed Nathan a final sealed envelope, this one thicker than the first. As Nathan left the funeral home, the weight of the day's revelations settled over him. The family had already dispersed, no doubt heading to his Aunt Margaret's house for the reception. Nathan decided he needed time alone before facing them and the questions that would inevitably come. Nathan drove to Henderson Park, a quiet spot overlooking the river. It had been one of his favorite places to grade papers and read during warmer months. Now, as autumn leaves swirled around his parked car, he opened Evelyn's second letter with careful fingers. Nathan, by now, Richard will have informed you of my decision regarding the estate. I imagine you're confused. That's understandable. When your grandfather died 15 years ago, something in me hardened. Howard was the only person who truly understood me, who saw past my difficult exterior. Without him, I found myself surrounded by family who viewed me as nothing more than an obligation or an inheritance waiting to happen. I began testing people, being deliberately difficult, watching to see who would stay despite my sharp tongue. Most people failed this test spectacularly. You were different. Even as a teenager, you stood your ground with me. You never pandered or pretended. When I criticized your choice to become a teacher, you didn't argue or try to justify yourself. You simply continued on your path with conviction. The first time you brought me a book in the hospital, instead of empty platitudes, I realized you were more like Howard than I had allowed myself to see. He too believed in the power of words to bridge impossible gaps between people. My cruelty was a shield, Nathan, a protection against disappointment. It's not an excuse, merely an explanation from a woman too old and stubborn to change her ways before the end. Inside this envelope, you'll find a key to the small writing desk in my bedroom. In the bottom drawer is a manuscript, my life story, such as it is. Perhaps it will help you understand me better, though I'm not sure I deserve to be understood. I've observed your kindness, your patience with difficult students, your dedication to teaching others to love literature, as I secretly did. These qualities are worth more than money, but the money is yours nonetheless. One last thing, the eulogy. Whatever you said, and I'm certain it was more generous than I deserved, thank you for speaking, for not leaving me to silence at the end. With respect, and yes, love. Your grandmother Nathan read the letter twice more, tears blurring his vision. The park had emptied as evening approached, leaving him alone with the rustling leaves and the gentle sound of the river below. He thought about the version of Evelyn he had created in his eulogy, the warm, supportive grandmother who had never existed, and yet in her own way, perhaps she had existed after all, watching from a distance, collecting mementos of his life, taking pride in his accomplishments while never finding the words to express it. His phone buzzed with messages from family members wondering where he was. No doubt rumors of the inheritance had already begun to circulate. There would be shock, resentment, perhaps even attempts to contest the will. But those concerns seemed distant now. Nathan started his car and headed toward his grandmother's house. His house now. He had a key to find, a manuscript to read, and a grandmother to finally meet, even after her death. The reception at Aunt Margaret's house was exactly as Nathan had anticipated. As he entered, conversations hushed, and all eyes turned toward him. His cousin Melissa approached first, her expression a practiced mask of sympathy that didn't reach her eyes. "Nathan, we were wondering where you disappeared to," she said, her voice honey-sweet. "Mr. Hartwell mentioned he spoke with you. Is everything all right?" Before Nathan could respond, his uncle Robert joined them, clapping a hand on Nathan's shoulder with newfound warmth. "That was quite a eulogy, nephew. I had no idea you and Mother were so close." Nathan observed the room. Relatives who had barely acknowledged him at previous family gatherings now watched him with keen interest. The power of $2 million, he thought wryly. "I need to speak with everyone," Nathan announced, his teacher's voice carrying across the room. The chatter ceased immediately. "I've learned some things today about grandmother that have surprised me," he began. "It seems she was more observant and thoughtful than any of us realized." He watched their expressions, hopeful, calculating, curious. "She left me her estate," he continued, deciding directness was the best approach. "And something more valuable, a chance to understand who she really was." The reactions were varied and immediate. Aunt Margaret's face paled, Uncle Robert's hand fell from Nathan's shoulder, and Cousin Melissa's smile froze in place. Others didn't bother hiding their shock or resentment. "This isn't about the money," Nathan said firmly. "It's about something grandmother wrote to me. She said that sometimes the people who are hardest to love are the ones who need love the most." He thought of his most difficult students over the years, the ones who acted out, who challenged him, who put up walls to protect themselves. How often those were the ones most in need of patience and understanding. "I won't be contesting the will," Aunt Margaret said suddenly, her voice thick with emotion. "Mother made her choice, and I understand why." She looked at Nathan with new respect. "You were the only one who truly saw her." One by one, other family members expressed similar sentiments, some more graciously than others. By the time Nathan left the reception, a fragile peace had settled over the family. There would be complications and difficult conversations ahead, but for now, understanding had prevailed. Later that evening, Nathan sat in Evelyn's study, his study now, with her manuscript open before him. The Unspoken Life, Memoirs of Evelyn Walsh, was written in her elegant hand on the title page. As he began to read, he discovered a woman he had never known. A young girl with dreams of becoming a writer, a woman who had loved fiercely but expressed it poorly, a widow who had retreated into herself rather than show vulnerability. On the desk beside the manuscript sat the scrapbook, open to the blank pages at the end. Nathan reached for a pen and began to write on the first empty page. "Today, I learned that sometimes the stories we tell about others become truths of their own. In creating a eulogy for a grandmother I thought I didn't know, I discovered she had been watching over me all along. Her final gift wasn't the inheritance, but the understanding that love doesn't always wear the face we expect it to." Outside, autumn leaves danced in the wind as Nathan continued writing, filling in the first of many blank pages with new understanding. In death, his grandmother had taught him something he would carry into his classroom and his life, that beneath the hardest exteriors often beat the most tender hearts, and that it was never too late to revise the story of a life. If this story touched your heart, please subscribe to our channel, leave a like and share your thoughts in the comments. Your support helps us continue bringing you these meaningful narratives that remind us of the complex beauty of human connections.